All right. We are live.
Let's go.
The old man and the three. First time doing a YouTube live, Tommy. This is going to be fun. I think for a lot of people, they're not sure what they just witnessed in Game 2 of the Clippers series. The ending. Let's talk about this real quick. So, by the book, by the rule, on an inbounds pass, there is no offensive goaltending. So you can literally throw the ball and it could be in the cylinder, and a taller player such as a Deandre Ayton can touch the ball in the cylinder, dunk the basketball. We saw this a couple years ago, actually, with Tyson Chandler in Phoenix. They ran a similar play. It was more of a side out off an ATO, after a timeout, but we've seen this before. This is the crazy thing. This is what I'm going through in my mind as I'm watching this, and I see the play happen. I'm like, Monty Williams is the most detail-oriented guy I've been around. Like he's Stan Van Gundy, Brad Stevens level of just detail. There's zero chance in my mind that they haven't ran that play. They haven't prepared for that scenario,
knowing that something like this could happen.
Yes, it's incredible.
So I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know that rule. Why don't more teams run that with the guys? When you have a guy like Ayton or Joel, like why is it not the play every time?
It's a great question, because every time I've ever practiced that play in let's say a shoot around or a walkthrough, it's always in an end game scenario, but there's no reason you couldn't run that with 7 minutes and 32 seconds the second quarter. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you could run that whenever you wanted. So I don't know why teams don't. It's probably a little bit of a high risk play. My observation on that play, first of all, tremendous execution. Jay Crowder, great pass. Deandre Ayton, great play. Devin Booker, great screen. I really question. Like I love Ty Lue.
He's coached his ass off.
He's been amazing in the playoffs.
This playoffs.
Amazing, and he's a championship level coach. He deserves a ton of credit. He's got the all-time best record in elimination games for NBA coaches in the playoffs. I don't understand why Zubac was in the game at that point in time, because it's a dead ball. You have a chance to sub him out, and you have a chance to put 5 players out on the court that can switch. And with that amount of time, there's no reason you shouldn't switch a back screen. I mean, I've played on teams before where on an inbounds pass, a back screen, no matter what time, score, matchup, it doesn't matter. A back screen on an inbounds pass underneath the basket is an automatic switch. At that point in the game, it's got to be a switch, Tommy. It's got to be a switch.
But so if there's different personnel, you think they switch that back screen?
I think they should have switched it even if it is Zubac. I think they should have switched it regardless. Yeah. I mean, worst case, Booker runs to space. You got a 7-footer contesting a very off-balance catch and shoot 3. You got to switch that. We should just talk about a little bit.
Can we talk about the pass for a second? I mean, that pass was fucking insane.
It was perfection. So when I've practiced that shot before, that play before, the pass is always coming from the hash mark, because you've called a timeout. There's 0.3 seconds, there's 0.2 seconds, whatever it may be. We practice, you throw it towards the rim. At that angle to get the ball where he wasn't completely underneath the basket. He had a little bit of room towards the corner, but at that angle to get the ball perfectly in the cylinder, it was perfection. I got to give him a ton of credit. That was a tremendous playoff game, bro. That was like so fun to watch. And is it
crazy? Is it crazy to you that these games keep one upping? So you went to the game Saturday.
I went to Game 7.
You went to Game 7 Saturday in Brooklyn.
Milwaukee. Yes, I was sitting.
And we'll get to that. We'll get to Sunday night. But we have had, I guess, with maybe the exception of Game 1 of this series, which was a fine game, but wasn't an all-time memorable game. It feels like for the last week, every time we watch one of these things, we leave and we're like, what the fuck just happened?
It feels like that. And look, we've like obviously we're on our own podcast. We're on our own YouTube feed. We're obviously going to plug our own podcast. We've got a podcast coming out in about 3 or 4 hours with TJ McConnell. We're going to hit on a bunch of playoff stuff. And one of the things we talk about on the pod is just how good these playoffs have been. And we're going to get into a little bit about the lack of star power and how some of these stars are out. But the quality of games has been tremendous. And for as shitty as this season has been, and I get it as a player and I get it as an NBA fan because I am an NBA fan and I watch a ton of games. There's been some bad games this season. You know, some games where you're like, oh, this team has mailed it in. These playoffs have been so competitive. I want to just kind of go through a little bit. So I took a ton of notes on this game, but I started taking notes. There was a timeout, 93-90 was the score. And from that point, like it wasn't the prettiest game. It wasn't the prettiest game, let's be honest. But from that point on, 93-90, coming out of that timeout with about 3 minutes to go, the shot making, the execution, we've got a Bridges, Mikal Bridges makes a three out of the timeout. PG comes back and hits a three with about 2:30 to go. Ayton scores, Zubac scores, Payne gets a lefty lay. Kennard, who I want to mention a little bit later on, hits a jumper off an ATO. Book gets an offensive foul. PG makes a free throw. Zubac, gets a block on Campaign, which is a huge play. For as good as Campaign was in the pick and roll all night in that 1-5 pick and roll, PG gets a layup. D-Book hits a pull up. PG scores again. Like, it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And as a fan, man, it was fun to watch. We should talk about Deandre Ayton. Ayton.
We have a couple things we should talk about Deandre Ayton. We should also talk, not to get lost in the weeds, about Campaign, but let's do Ayton first.
Well, so here's the thing with Ayton. He's so underappreciated. Like, when we think about the 2018 draft, he's the number 1 pick. And in nearly every other draft, he has delivered or over-delivered for a number 1 pick at this point in his career. But because he was drafted ahead of Luka and Trey, I feel like he just kind of flies under the radar. This guy's been for 3 years, 16-10. The funny thing is, Tommy, like, you're watching the game. He had 24 and 14 tonight on – what did he shoot from the field? I wrote it down somewhere. He had 24 and 14 tonight. He doesn't get a single play called for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a single play called for him.
And his activity and his energy for somebody his size is a little bit unprecedented. At least, maybe not unprecedented is the wrong word, but there's just not a lot of guys moving like he is at his stature. And I think it's been interesting. I feel like the underappreciated thing, I mean, that's part of that with this team. I mean, I think Book, to a certain extent, has been underappreciated before this year. I don't think that people, and we've talked about it a ton on the show. And when Chris got traded there, obviously we talked about it with him, and every player knows. But he's going to be, he already is, one of the premier scorers that's been in this league for like a very long time.
No, Book is unbelievable. Even with Ayton, like, we talk about NBA Twitter all the time, and I follow NBA Twitter, and I follow who's buzzing, what people are talking about. Like, we hear all the time about Shea. We hear about Jaren Jackson Jr.
Ayton was 12 for 15 tonight.
12 for 15. We hear about both the Bridges guys, Mikal and Miles, Michael Porter Jr., Kevin Huerter the other night, Kevin Huerter the other night. Even Colin Sexton gets some love at times on NBA Twitter. Like, there's never any love for Deandre Ayton. The guy just goes out. He does his job. I actually asked them. They were staying during the Lakers series when we were playing the Clippers. We ended up overlapping at the hotel, and I ran into him as we were kind of headed towards the meal rooms together. And I was like, yo, man, what has it been like playing with CP? And he said, basically, like, it's been the best thing for my career to be around a guy. And this is my thought process tonight. Like, they're playing without CP, but the attention to detail, the diligence, like with CP, Monty Williams, Kevin Young, an assistant coach there, Willie Green, a star assistant coach there. Like, those young guys are learning the nuances of the game, and the execution to me tonight for that team, campaign, Deandre Ayton, Cam Johnson,
I was going to say
Dario Saric,
4-3. Yeah,
they were awesome.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think one trend that we've noticed, obviously with the Suns, but we've noticed it with all the teams that have had any success in the playoffs this year, has been role players. Yeah. And it's been bench guys stepping up. It's been guys who forget household names nationally, might not even been particularly well known in their own markets. I mean, Mann was like that in LA. In the Utah series, he was barely playing against you guys.
Yeah. So
but it's like these guys basically stepping up.
Yo, Kenny Beecham, what's up, man? Kenny just shouted us out.
What's up, Kenny?
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. I actually wrote notes. I'm glad you brought this up. So one of the notes I had in watching this game, which was really fascinating, is you're missing 2 of the 4 best players in the series, right? I'm not going to rank the 4 best players, but we know who the 4 best players are. It's Kawhi, PG, Chris, and Devin Booker. And you're missing 2 of those guys. And I think what you saw tonight, a campaign played out of his mind, and we'll talk about him in a second. But what you saw tonight was a bunch of guys on both teams that starred in their roles. And I don't think for the casual fan that they appreciate how hard it is to star in a tertiary or even lesser role. And, you get on the line like Terrence Mann, he's done it all playoffs, campaign, Cam Johnson, Reggie Jackson, Dario Saric was amazing tonight. And so I think to get to this point in the postseason, conference finals, next round NBA finals, you have got to have your role players starring in their role. And Cam Johnson, he was awesome in his minutes. Dario Saric was awesome in his minutes. Reggie Jackson has been amazing throughout the playoffs. He's been a legitimate third option, reliable, consistent. It's been really great. You're a Bulls. Hold on. You're a Bulls fan. OKC trades Cam. The Bulls traded for campaign. They release him a few months later.
I don't think they knew what they were trading for when they made the trade, for the record. I was saying to someone earlier tonight, Cam's story is a Disney movie. I mean, this guy was scratching for 10 days a year and a half ago. Yeah. He was playing on I don't even know the name of this team he was playing for. He was playing for the Shanxi Loons and the Texas Legends.
Yes.
He was getting minutes for the Texas Legends, and now he's dropping 30 points in a game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. And by the way, a clean 30. It was an efficient 30. This was not Cam throwing up miracle shots. This guy is in complete control of the game every time. When you played against him, have you noticed that shift? Because you guys, they lit you up in New Orleans once, and then you guys got them, I remember, another time. But I remember when they beat you, he played really – and that was the first time I had sort of seen the new campaign. I was like, wait a second. That's not the same guy. I know they have the same name, but it's not the same guy.
I mean no disrespect to him, because I respect the grind. I respect the player he has become. But early in his career, I remember telling people, like, campaign is not an NBA player. I have no idea why that guy was a lottery pick. I remember telling people that. And he's definitely proven me wrong. He's proven a lot of people wrong. I think a lot of it is confidence. And so you mentioned last year, he plays in China. He plays in the G League. They mentioned a bunch on the broadcast tonight, but he gets a call because they needed a body for the bubble. They go 8-0. He plays great in the bubble. He's now got momentum. Personal experience. For me, my third year, our playoff run when we made the finals, that solidified to me when I got to play in that playoff run, that solidified to me that I belonged in the NBA. And so a lot of it is confidence. I think he's naturally an aggressive player, and he's found a balance there of how to be a point guard and be aggressive. But the biggest part to me is and this is important for, I think, every NBA player, is you just have to know who you are. Like once you figure out who you are, and I used to tell this to Austin Rivers all the time when he was with us in the Clippers, like, what do you do every night? Like, who are you going to be? Like, we all want to be an all-star. We all want to get 15 to 20 shots a game. That's going to be 2 guys. That's going to be 3 guys, maybe. Like the other 6 to 7 guys in the rotation, like who are you going to be every night? Cam has figured that out. And because of that, he's got the confidence to step up in a game 2 at home, no CP, playing against a desperate team and have a career high. So just props to him, man.
How much of that, to get back to the Ty Lue props for a second, how much of that do you think is coaching? Because I think, the Suns, we just listed a bunch of examples of it and we're seeing it every night. But the Clippers undoubtedly have done a great job of that as well. And I think a guy that we should shout out, who you mentioned briefly before, is Luke, who did not play, I think, in the first 5 games of the Dallas series, and people were making jokes and about his contract. Comes in, is a little rocky at first, and then he's probably the reason why they win Game 7.
Yeah,
against you guys. I mean, he comes in the end of the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, and scores 12 points, and basically turns the game around. He was good in the Utah series, and then tonight, if they had won tonight, we probably would have looked at him as the reason why they won tonight. And so, but that's an example of like those guys are ready. So he's not over there sulking. He's like, I might not play for 5 games, but when I get in, I'm ready.
I'll never forget this. I will never forget this. So we play game 1 in LA and we win. This is the most recent series, the Mavs series. So we win in LA. Luke doesn't play. And to leave to get back to the bus, I got to walk by their locker room and their weight room. And it's like, it's a late game, whatever. Like it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I walk out, I'm walking towards the bus, and Luke comes around the corner. He's drenched in sweat, breathing heavy. Like, I don't know if he was in the weight room. I don't know if he was on the bike. I don't know if he was on the court. I don't know what he was doing. But he had done all his prep that day, then did enough after so that he was in shape and ready. He didn't play for another 4 games. Comes in a little bit in the first half of Game 6, plays well in the second half of Game 6, kills us in the second half of Game 7. Again, it's confidence. Now his confidence is there. He's been fantastic. He had, he had 10 points in the fourth quarter. It's a testament to staying ready and being a professional. And I say this all the time. Like we've talked about this in the podcast. Like some series are not your series. Some games are not your games. When you're a role player in the playoffs, like you may play 4 minutes some nights, and other nights you may take 12 shots and play 28 minutes. That's just reality. And so you have to be mentally tough enough and as a good teammate to accept that. And so, whether it's Luke, Dario, Reggie Jackson, like all these guys, man, like they're tough, competitive, skilled guys, and they've stayed ready. By the way, before we jump to the next basketball thing, I just want to give a shout out to Lil Yachty, because this guy put an awesome tweet out tonight about Interstellar, and everybody who follows the pod. He's
coming on the pod.
Yeah, he apparently loves Interstellar the same way I love Interstellar.
It's honestly going to be like, I might just skip that up because I feel like you guys can just go deep for an hour, and I'll just be like on the sidelines, be like, yeah, it's a good movie, but I haven't seen it 75 times.
We had a little exchange, like 5 or 6 tweets back and forth tonight about Interstellar, and he said something like, yo, we really need a part 2. I want to know what happened to those people on the other planet. And I said to him, this is true, man. Like, there's been nights that I cannot sleep because I'm wondering what happened to the frozen embryos on Brand's planet.
I actually think that we should start an Interstellar book club, because I bet
Interstellar book club,
not a book club, but like some sort of club, because there's definitely other people that are like this, and they all probably think that they're alone. I'm sure there's people in the comments right now that are like this. The other shout out we have to say very briefly is Free Caruso. I don't know any of the details, but that's our boy.
Man, listen.
So we got to get him out. We'll have whatever we can do.
Yes.
We're going to be helpful.
I have not smoked weed today. I have not smoked weed recently, actually. But I will advocate for him in that marijuana should be legal and possession of marijuana should be legal. And
Of
that
course.
guy,
we're character witnesses. He's a good
I'm a
person.
character witness to Alex CARUSO. That guy's the man. That guy's the man. While we're doing this, while we're off topic a little bit, by the way, bro, did you see the trailer for Fast and the Furious 9?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the plot is. I have no fucking idea. But
I'm
going to see that movie.
Of course.
I'm going to see that movie.
Every one of those movies makes $1 billion for this exact reason.
Oh, they're so good. They're so good. All right, we should briefly touch on the draft as well. So the draft lottery was tonight. Did you get the feeling, by the way? I got this weird feeling. So we're going through the draft lottery and they're naming, all the picks, and it becomes apparent like Cleveland has stolen a spot in the top 4. And
I thought they were going to win it again.
Yeah, I did too. And Toronto has stolen a spot in the top 4. I thought Cleveland was going to win it until when there were 4 teams left, they showed Ben Wallace.
And you were like, Ben is going to will it home.
And Ben's doing this. He's rubbing his hands. He's got a smile on his face. And I'm like, I think Ben knows something we don't know.
Here we go.
I think Ben knows something.
Here we go.
So
I'm happy for the Detroit fans. They haven't had a lot to be happy about over the last couple of years. Cade is, that's our guy, but like he's going to be amazing. He's going to be exciting on day one.
Yeah.
And they have some. I'm like curious what you think, but like they have some pieces there. Grant is a really good player. Sadiq had a great rookie season. Stewart had a great rookie season. I mean, they were clearly like game planning the season for this to happen, and it worked. So it's not like they're not like in an in-between pattern. It's like they needed something like this to happen. And I want to hear your thoughts on the draft, but I'm just curious off of this Atlanta conversation. We talk about this a little bit with TJ on the show tomorrow. Like, you seems like right now you need one guy like that. You need a Trey, you need a Luka, and then if the other players fit around them, I'm not saying you're going to win a championship, but you can make the playoffs. Cade will come back on in 8 months and he'll have won the bet against you. And so like we'll see. We'll see. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think you need 2 guys. You need 2 guys and a bunch of skilled guys around it, but you need a table setter. You need a guy who's going to create and set the table for everyone else. And I think Cade's definitely going to be that guy. You mentioned Sadiq, was first team all rookie, Isaiah Stewart, second team all rookie. Like, I don't know that those guys are franchise guys. Cade is a franchise guy by all accounts. Like, he is the type of player that can be a franchise guy. On the bet, so for anybody listening right now, watching right now, when Cade came on our podcast, I said to him, there's 0 chance that he's playing next year in the middle of May, which would mean the second round. And he said to me, bet, I will talk to you next year at this time. I'm still holding true that Detroit will not be in the second round of the playoffs next year. That's not an affront to anyone on their team.
Do we know that mid-May is going to be second round or not first round?
Yeah, generally speaking, whenever we recorded the pod, it was around mid-May. And the second round in a normal year. I have a feeling you're
going to get technical if you're the 8th seed. You're going to be like, well, we recorded this on May 17th, and they only made it till May 4th, so it doesn't count.
Tommy, let's be real. I know you love to just gas our guests up, and like you're just like you're a dreamer. You're a dreamer.
I'm not a dreamer. I'm just saying we saw Charlotte. They didn't win in the play-in game. We see this is a good parallel to the playoffs. This is actually a question I had for you when I was watching this game tonight. Take Phoenix, for example. Phoenix 2 years ago was in a desperate situation. They had Book. They had one guy that is like a clear-cut rising star. There wasn't a lot of hope on the horizon otherwise. They draft Ayton. They're still, before the bubble run last year, they still were in a sort of a weird place. They're still at the bottom of the sort of pack in the West. Then they trade for Chris. Now they're 2 games from going to the finals. And honestly, who knows what happens when they get to the finals? They could very easily win the finals in 3 weeks. So I guess my question to you is like, shouldn't every team be like, there's only one Chris Paul, but like, shouldn't every team be like, all right, you know what? We have one stud. Let's go out. Like, why are we trying to lose for 4 years? Like, why are we trying to I'm not even trying to like make it this a process thing as much as more just like, why would we not try to do what they did with Chris and like establish a winning culture? Because you just never know once you get here.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's a great thought exercise about, well, let's talk about the process. And the process sort of set the table and the precedent for what a number of teams have tried to do and are still doing. OKC is a great example of that. So prior to the process starting, Philly lost in the second round in Game 7 against the Boston Celtics. And at that point in time, you could make an argument they were probably one piece away from being a top 4 or 5 team, from being a real contender. They had a lot of good pieces. So my question is, and I don't know the answer to this, would you rather rebuild and start from scratch, or would you rather be mediocre for a few years, bide your time, but be one piece away, one move away, one signing, one draft pick that hits, maybe it's later in the first round, one trade away? Like, you have to be smart with your cap. You have to collect assets and all that stuff. I don't necessarily think that tanking is the correct answer 100% of the time, but I think for a lot of people, and even this is the other thing too, is like, we're bad. We're going to sell badness to our fan base. NBA teams do this, right? We're going to give you hope, but we're not actually ever going to deliver results.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And I should say, I mean, you know, to contradict myself a little bit, part of why Phoenix was able to do this is because they did have Devin, you know, and they felt strongly that Devin was that guy. And, you know, to my point earlier about Detroit, I don't think Detroit did the wrong thing because, you know, I think Sadiq is going to be a really good player. I think Isaiah is going to be a really good player. But to your point, what you said, it's not clear that they're going to be somebody like Cade, you know, a perennial all-star who could potentially be one of the best players in the league. And so it does make sense why you need to go find that person. But there are a lot of young stars all over the place right now, and it just isn't. It's an interesting thought exercise as these younger sort of crops of players. I mean, another good example of this is like a team like Memphis. Not that Memphis is going to tank anytime soon, but like Memphis with what they have with Ja and what they're building there is going to build that organically, you know. And who knows what they're going to do next year? Who knows what kind of tweaks they're going to add? But they didn't need to bottom out for 3 years to get to that place. Correct.
Jason, on the other end of our video here, do we have any questions? Should we answer some questions real quick? Corey, what's up? Corey Tang, he wants a shout out. Corey Tang, what's up, bud? How are you doing?
How are we doing in these comments? Jason here.
I'm just adding myself for a second.
Out.
Hey, Jason.
Guys, I'm just going to read you guys some questions.
Let's
How about that? Does that sound good? Okay. Yeah. With regards to this, how much, this is from Jacob, user Jacob, shout out Jacob. How much does, say, a long replay review impact a game? How much do players hate it? Or do you just want the correct call?
Great question. It sucks as a fan watching the game tonight, all the reviews. I'm just like, it's just overkill. And I think as a fan, you have the benefit of an instant replay, whereas a player or coach, when you're on the court, like, you're waiting for it to show up on the Jumbotron, or you're waiting for the refs to do it because it doesn't always show up on the Jumbotron, especially if the home team is probably not going to be favorable in the replay, right? So from a player, you just want the right call. It also, like, it benefited Phoenix tonight because that play with 0.8 seconds, they changed the clock to 0.9 seconds. It allowed them an opportunity to draw up essentially an ATO, an after timeout play. Whereas if they had just stuck with the call and no replay, they've got to call a play on the fly. Tommy's terrible at basketball. That's we all know that.
Listen, this is the problem when you start a company with a bunch of professional basketball players. What am I going to say? I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm not really that good, to be honest with you, but like, there's no point in getting into this. I should say though, and I'm not going to get into too many specifics. Forget basketball for a second. The three of us, Jason on the other line, played Pop-A-Shot down in Dallas. Jason's very good at Pop-A-Shot.
Elite. I would call him
very,
elite.
very, very good. I'm okay at Pop-A-Shot. JJ's obviously very good at Pop-A-Shot. This is what he does professionally. But
Jason the other day, by the way, I assume your wife set it up, but Jason went to Dave & Buster's for Father's Day. And when he showed up to that particular location, he found out what the high score in Pop-A-Shot was. And he spent the next hour and a half, I believe, trying to beat that score. So the guy sent some practice.
It took me 5 minutes. I just want to make that clear. I'm not kidding.
Was Isaac there?
Yeah, he was there. He wasn't watching me, and I asked my wife to film it, and she did not.
Character.
Anyways,
a kid on his own. Beat the Pop-A-Shot score.
All right, let's do a couple more questions, Jason.
Okay. All right. So JJ, thoughts on Bucks and Hawks? Bucks and Hawks. Who you got?
Bucks and Hawks.
I can actually look at that. Goodbye.
Oh, from Rashid, thank you. I got Bucks. I got Bucks win the series. I think when we had Drew on the pod, we kind of talked about this, but I think in the playoffs they have amazing defensive versatility. They've got 3 elite defenders. You could argue Brook Lopez is also an elite defender. They're trotting out a lineup that is highly switchable, disruptive guys. To me, let's go back to that game 7, Brooklyn against Milwaukee. 2 of the biggest plays in the game were KD on a closeout, getting to the rim, going up for a 2-handed dunk, Brook Lopez block. KD down the stretch in a pick and roll, gets to his left hand, Brook blocks it off the backboard. Those plays are huge plays. So to me, I think defensively, Milwaukee's just too good for Atlanta. I may eat crow on that one, but I got Bucks and Suns in the finals. Tommy, who do you have in the finals?
I have Bucks and Suns as well. I had the Clippers pre-Kawhi injury, but I don't think that's changing now. I think that Trey's been unbelievable. I think that Drew is a different beast defensively in a weird way, even though he's playing against great defensive players in Philly, but I think Drew's a different beast. I think he's going to have issues, and I think they are not going to have anyone who can really do much to slow down Giannis. I think it's just a bad matchup for them. I think it'll be a good series, though. I mean, I don't think it's going to be 4 or 5.
I think it'll be a good series.
But I think one person we should shout out, who we've shouted out for sure on the show, he hasn't been on the show yet, but hopefully he'll be on this summer, is Chris Middleton, who's just a fucking dog. I mean, talk about like wanting and hitting big shots all series long.
Yeah. He's not scared of the moment.
He's not scared of the moment. And even in that overtime when everybody was gassed and on fumes, you're like, there's one guy on that team who's like, give me the ball.
Yeah. And he ultimately hit the biggest shot in overtime. All right, it's damn near 1:00 in the morning. Let's do one more question, Jason.
Jason's shooting.
Oh, there, he put it up for us. What's your favorite city you've played in throughout your career? When we're just talking about cities, I want to be very clear on this. We're not talking about the organization or my teammates or my coaches or the front office or ownership or anything like that. Just the city. Tommy, you know my answer to this question. 100% New Orleans. New Orleans is one of the greatest places in America, if not the world. I could spend maybe the rest of my life there. Maybe not the summers because it's fucking humid, but that city is just amazing. There's an energy, there's a life, there's a culture, there's a vibe, great food, great people, great music. Like it's got everything that I love in a city. Great architecture. Those older shotgun style homes that you see in Marigny and Bywater and the Garden District. Like it's got everything. You love New Orleans.
I love New Orleans. That's a great answer. Somebody in the comments said 2-on-1, who wins, Jason and me versus you. I'm like, you guys have to understand something. We say this on the show, and it's like not a joke. Like, Jay is really good at basketball.
Jason and Tommy have zero chance.
We can have 5 of our friends. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. The one thing I learned very early in my life was to not make claims like, Jason and I are feeling it. It's like, no, there's just levels to this shit. There's just levels.
I'll end this live session on this one story, and I've told this story I think on the pod before. It's one of my favorite stories. So I dated this girl in college from Minneapolis. She was a Duke co-ed, and I would go up and visit her in the summer. And so I was up in Minneapolis one summer, and I'm working out at the gym. Her brother came and rebounded me from doing my shots or whatever. And this kid, he's my age, whatever. He's in college too. He comes over to me and he's like, yo, man. He's like, I play college basketball. I can't remember the school. It's a D2 or D3 school. He's like, I know you can shoot, but can you go off the dribble? He's like, I want you to show me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, come on, play me one-on-one. And I'm like, all right, I'll play you one-on-one. And I fucking destroyed this kid 11-0. I don't even know if he ever got the ball. Like, it wasn't even.
But just like that, you gotta bet something. It doesn't have to be money, but you need something where it's like you have to send a message where it's like, don't. I mean, Scalabrine did this the other day with that thing, and that was a sort of a weird example of it. But it's like, don't ever challenge someone like me again.
Yeah, I sent a message. It was 11-0. I sent a message. All right, appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. New pod coming out in the morning with TJ McConnell. He's awesome. Give it a listen. Tommy, peace.
Peace, guys.